In the dust of Jabalia, there seems little left to destroy. And yet, fresh strikes, more panic, and another desperate search for survivors.
My message to the world is it is enough. Come to our aid. We cannot walk anymore, nor eat, nor speak. We lost our houses, our children and youth are gone, our children's future is lost.
Some lives ended before they'd even begun. It was a long night for civil defence volunteers in Gaza's north. This was a family home. 3 are dead, many more are missing. If efforts to dig through the rubble in the dark look hopeless, it's because in the end they were. In Gaza City, Al-Shifa Hospital, the ambulances aren't bringing in patients, they're delivering the dead. Unknown child, the note on this body bag reads. Others, though, can be identified and given an all-too rushed farewell before they're taken away to be buried. At least 140 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza in the last 24 hours, according to local authorities. The IDF stepped up its strikes, launching Operation Gideon's Chariots, a major new offensive to, quote, achieve the goals in this war, the release of the remaining October 7 hostages and the defeat of Hamas. To Israel, the escalation may mean the end game. To Gaza, it means more casualties, more horror and loss. To the rest of the world, it's a mark of just how unsuccessful recent international pressure on resolving this conflict has been.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
The energy of Donald Trump's inauguration promises seem to have been sapped by reality. He cut a weary figure returning from the White House from his Middle East trip, with investment deals and a renewed bond with Syria under his belt, but no grand bargain in the form of a Gaza breakthrough to boast of. Even the fist bump was at best half-hearted. He'd barely left the region before Israel announced its new offensive. Then, within hours of the escalation, Hamas and Israel agreed to a fresh round of ceasefire talks in Doha. In Gaza, those talks don't seem particularly loud and nowhere near urgent enough.
We had hope because Trump had said there was a surprise. We thought that would be a resolution to all of this, but every time now they say there's a surprise, the number of martyrs and wounded rises and the bombardments increase.
Faras Al-Mansi was asleep with her children when her camp outside Al-Aqsa Hospital was hit. The children have no toys to play with, but that's the least of their worries. Now they have no shelter, no food, and no idea what to do next.
Well, Ian Lennon is a consultant in emergency medicine who's currently volunteering in Gaza with the charity UK Med. When I spoke to him earlier, I asked what things had been like over the last few days.
Certainly, there's a lot of activity going on around the hospital in terms of explosions that we can hear and small arms fire at quite some distance from us, to be fair. I visited Nasser Hospital on Thursday, and they were seeing daily mass casualty incidents of 5 or 6 severely injured patients.
We've seen lots of reports about difficulties getting access to aid, to food. That's what we've been hearing on the ground. What are you seeing?
So we have a reasonable supply following the ceasefire. We had the opportunity to bring in quite a lot of supplies, but we're now very much in the position where we're running out of simple staple items like bandages and dressings. And some of our medicines, the ones which we're using more frequently, pain relievers and so on, are also becoming really quite tight at the moment.
There's going to be a bigger operation that is happening. Are you concerned about more people coming from the north to the south where you are? What impact would that have?
We're certainly planning for a wave of people to come through our hospital at some point over the next few days. Almost certainly, we will start to see an increase in activity from patients, from people being displaced down from the north and from other areas near us, and also as other hospitals are losing their facilities we're having to take transfers from those facilities. And we're already seeing that on a daily basis.
Capacity-wise, how are you doing? What are beds looking like? How are people coping?
So it's important to remember that actually most of the staff that we have here in the hospital are actually Palestinian nationals. So they are working very hard for us here and working very hard for their countrymen. But at the same time, they are also having to go home and live in bombed out houses and tents, which are putting a certain amount of psychological strain on everybody here. Everybody tells us that they are hungry. We are seeing quite a lot of people simply with fatigue and lethargy because they're not getting enough food now.
What are some of the personal stories that you're seeing of people coming in? What are they telling you?
Because I'm an emergency medicine doctor, I tend to see the more severely injured, and they're less able to tell me some of those stories. When I was visiting NASA, we had a family of 4 from a shelled house who came in, who had all been crushed under the rubble. And it was less that they'd been directly injured by the missile, it was more the falling masonry. One of them had died shortly after we'd managed them in the emergency department. We transferred them for further imaging and investigation, and they died whilst we were performing that.
Ian Lennon, thank you very much for your time indeed. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Earlier, I also spoke to James Elder, UNICEF global spokesman, who's been to Gaza many times. He's currently in Geneva. I began by asking him for the latest updates from his team on the ground.
Horrendous. I don't think I've heard the level of despair and despondency. The bombardments have been as ferocious as anything we've seen in months. We're almost at like a massacre a day now. So you have got intense bombardments, heavy tank work, 24/7, and of course, Aisha, more than 2 months with nothing. No food, no medicines, no commercial activity, no aid, nothing entering the Gaza Strip apart from bombs for more than 2 months.
And James, you're painting such a bleak picture, but just going into the granular level, what are you hearing on some of the stories, some of the individual people who are going through this on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, well, so a woman I spoke to yesterday who I've been in touch with quite a lot, who's had an amputation and desperately needs a medical evacuation, but the line she used to me was the look in her children's eyes, she's no longer sure if it's hunger or fear.
Speaking of that, all this week we have seen horrific images of malnourished children. Donald Trump saying a lot of people are starving this week. How many children do you think are affected? What proportion of the population now is at risk of malnutrition?
The entire child population is at risk of malnutrition, there's no doubt. And we're not hyperbolic with this. Everything we say is based on data. And what you're alluding to here is the world's biggest nutritional body that looked at the level of famine risk in Gaza. And yes, people are now starving. Now, you know, starving is something that it's not a natural disaster. It's being inflicted on the powerless. And starving is a pretty horrible thing to see. People are eating in fancy restaurants 20 or 30 miles away. It's beyond the pale now.
I want to ask you about a specific report that we've seen about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, Swiss registered, led by a former US Marine. They're saying that they wouldn't be able to feed some of the most vulnerable civilians from the militarized compounds that it plans to set up. What have you made of their plans so far, and do you have hope that it will be able to help?
Right now, during the ceasefire, United Nations and partners were working from around 400 distribution places, 400 to reach 2.1 million people. This organisation's talking about a handful, and a handful in the south. So it's using aid as a bait to force people to go to the south to a handful of distribution points. So you're supposed to walk a few miles, pick up 25 kilograms. So a woman I spoke to 10 days ago with 2 children whose husband's been killed and she's got an amputation. On one leg with 2 little children, she's to walk several miles, queue for however long, if she gets to the south, to pick up her 25 kilograms. It's unworkable, and the only way to save that population is to let the legal entities and follow international humanitarian law, let the United Nations do what it's been doing.
We've seen today reports that people are back around the table. You know, many people have been speaking out about the suffering that they have seen in Gaza, but isn't it the harsh reality that Israel's tactics here have worked in bringing Hamas back to the negotiating table, and humanitarian aid was not a condition for these talks?
Look, I'm not privy to the talks, and I think that there's been so much discussion in terms of where the goodwill has lied in terms of negotiations. The fact is, international law, of which Israel is a signatory, and Israel is the occupying power, has a legal responsibility to allow food aid to not starve a population. Those things are very, very clear. So whatever discussions are going on, and I'm not privy to those, whatever discussions are going on, you cannot use starvation as a method to negotiate.
James Elder, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha.